Hello everyone and welcome to my second video on this YouTube channel, which is about the President of India, and we'll be continuing and from where we left off in the first part. If you haven't watched the first part, I will link it in the description below, and please go and have a look. So the topics covered in this particular video will be talking about the conditions of the President's office. Then we'll move on to the term, the impeachment process, and the vacancy that arises in the office of the president during his tenure. Then we'll move out and talk about the veto power of the president, and we'll discuss the various types of veto, like absolute veto, suspensive veto, the pocket veto, and also the presidential veto over the state legislature. So let's start. And before moving on, let's see what we have already covered in the previous video. So there we talked about the brief overview of an union executive. Then we talked about the qualifications for election as the President of India. The nomination for the presidential candidate, where we said that 15 electors and 15 as proposed and 15 as seconders and 15,000 rupees to be submitted in RBI and all those things. So you can refer to the video. And then we talked about the oath and the formation that has to be taken by the president or any other person who assumes or the duties of the president in his absence. Moving on, let's start with the first topic, that is the conditions of the President's office, which is covered under Article 59 of the Constitution of India. So, what it says that the president, the elected person, he should not be a member of either house of parliament, that is the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, or a house of the state legislature. Even in any case in which this such a person is elected, then he is deemed to have vacated his or her seat on the date on which he enters the office of the president. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to convey that I have I have highlighted some keywords that you need to focus upon, and you need to see that, like, it is important in the sense that UPSC or many other exams sometimes twist the questions in uh, and they ask the questions in a different manner. So he is deemed to have vacated his or seat on the date on which he enters the office of the president. Okay. Then, as we had discussed earlier as well, so he or she should not hold any other office of profit. Then he is entitled to use of his official residence, the Rashtrapati Bhavan, and he needs not to pay. He need not pay any rent for that. He is entitled to free use of his residence, which is the Rashtrapati Bhavan situated in Delhi. Then another point to note is that he is entitled to allowances, privileges, emoluments, which is determined by the Parliament of India. So this is something that you need to remember, that the emoluments, the allowances, and privileges of the president, they are determined by the Parliament of our country. Then the other point is that the emoluments and allowances, it cannot be diminished during the term of his office. Then he's got personal immunity from any legal liability of his for his official acts that he carries out during the term of his office. Also, while he remains in office, he is immune from any criminal proceedings, even in respect of his personal acts. So he is immune from any criminal proceedings for his personal acts. However, we can see that civil proceedings can be instituted during his term of office only after giving 2 months' notice. Also, the president cannot be arrested or imprisoned while he is serving as the president of the nation. I hope this was clear, and let's move on to the next slide, and which uh, which talks about the term of the president's office. So the normal term or the tenure, which we call for the president, is 5 years from the date on which he enters his office. then he can always resign earlier without completing his 5 years by addressing his resignation to the Vice President of the nation. He can also be removed earlier before the end of his term of 5 years through the process of impeachment, which we have discussed subsequent in the subsequent slides. So stay tuned, yeah. And then he can hold office until his successor assumes charge. So in the subsequent part of the video, we have talked about this as well. Then he can be re-elected any number of times. So a particular person, he can be elected for a tenure of 5 years for any number of times. Until date, it is only Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the first president of the nation, who was elected successively for 2 times. So he served as the president for a total of 10 years. However, we have a clause in US where a person cannot be elected to the office of president more than twice. Yeah. So this is something that you should know, and you should know that in US a president cannot be elected to the office of president more than twice, while in India we can have a person serving as the president any number of times. Then we'll talk about the process of impeachment and in the subsequent slides. So let's move on. So the impeachment of the president of a nation. So when does why impeachment is required and when is it carried out? So the president, he can be removed from his office by the process of impeachment for violation of the constitution. Now the phrase violation of the constitution, it is nowhere defined in the constitution. And this process of impeachment, this can be initiated by any house of the parliament. That is, it can be initiated by either the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha when the president of the nation violates the constitution. So, what are the various steps involved in the process of impeachment? Let's have a look there. So, the resolution that the House of the Parliament would be bringing in, it should be signed by one-fourth of the members of the House, and a 14 days notice period should be given to the President. The impeachment resolution then has to be passed by two-thirds of the total membership of the House. और एक बार अगर ये pass हो गया, then it is sent to the other house for the investigation. Now, if it moves to the other house and the other house also sustains the charges and passes that resolution by another, not another, but passes that resolution by two-third majority of the total membership of the house, it is then that the president stands impeached from the date that the bill is passed. So let's have a quick revision. पहले it can be initiated by any house of the parliament on what basis? On the basis that it is and that the president has carried out a violation of the constitution. However, the exact meaning is not defined anywhere in the constitution. Then what are the steps involved? It should be signed by one-fourth of the members of the house that frame the charges और 14 days का notice देना होगा president को. Impeachment resolution पास होना चाहिए two-third of the total membership of the house. एक बार पास हो गई तो वो दूसरे हाउस में भेजी जाती है for investigation. If other house also sustains the charges and it passes the resolution by two-third majority of the total membership of the house, तब जाके president stands impeached from the date that bill is passed. So till date, no president has been impeached, and the president, he has the right to appear and to be represented at all such investigations in both the houses of the parliament. So moving on, let's talk about the vacancy in the president's house. We'll look at like in what cases can a president office be vacant, and I've just summarize it in the form of a table so that it is easy for you to grasp and understand and remember, uh, because it is very easy to grasp it when it is in the form of a table. So the first reason that can be there is that when the president, he has completed his tenure of 5 years, and the expiry of 5 years has happened. So in that case, a re-election should happen before the completion of the term. And if that re-election has not happened, then in that case, the sitting president continues to provide the scenario of interregnum. Now, who shall hold office in absence? In this case, if expiry of 5 years has done, then sitting president will continue until his successor comes. Another reason could be that there could be an untimely death, there could be removal by impeachment, as we discussed before. He might give his resignation address to the Vice President of the nation, or his election is declared void by the Supreme Court of India. We'll talk about the entire election process in a separate video. I'll make that video and put it really soon. And or in the case when the president is not capable to discharge his duties, then in that case the re-election has to take place within 6 months. Now, till 6 months, the office cannot be vacant, so there has to be some person who shall hold this office in his absence. So, who is that person? And yeah, you guessed it right. It is the vice president who is responsible to hold office till the new president comes. And in case if the vice president is also not available, then it is the chief justice of India, and it even if the chief justice is not present, then it is the senior most judge of the Supreme Court who shall be responsible for discharging the functions of the president. So, whenever such person he takes upon the responsibility of discharging the duties of the president, then he is also entitled to emoluments and allowances as received by the president, and he also has to take oath of affirmation before assuming the office. So this is something that we had discussed in the first video on oath and affirmation, and yeah, so that's what we have about the vacancy in the president's house. Now let's move on and see and discuss about the veto power of the president. So what happens is that a bill will become an act only when it receives uh, the the assent of the president. In case it is passed by the parliament, then it goes to the president, and when it is presented to the president, the president under Article 111, he has few alternatives when a bill is presented. So he can either give his assent, he can withhold his assent, या फिर he will return the bill only if it is not amenable for reconsideration of the parliament. However, अगर पार्लियामेंट ने वापस से प्रेसिडेंट को ये बिल फिर से present किया with or without amendment, then in that case the president is bound to give his assent. Now let's talk about the types of veto. First, it is absolute veto, qualified veto, which is not enjoined by the president of India, then the suspensive veto, and finally the public veto. So we'll talk about them in detail in the subsequent slides. So let's move. Talking about the absolute veto. So absolute veto, it gives the president the power to withhold his assent to the bill. In this case, if he exercises this veto, the bill ends and it does not become an act. Now, when can the president use this? Uh, there are two scenarios in which this absolute veto can be used by the president. It can be used for the bills which are introduced by the private members. So this is something that you need to take care that it is only for the bills that are introduced by the private members. And who really are the private members? The private members are the ones who are members of the parliament, but they are not ministers. So any bill that is introduced by private members can be uh, can be the president can use his absolute veto on those bills. Now he can also use it on government bills that the cabinet has resigned. Okay. So let's see the instances when this absolute veto was exercised. It was first used by Dr. Rajendra Prasad for PEPSU appropriation bill and by R. Venkataraman for salary allowances and pension of members of the parliament bill. If you are interested, you can read more about them, and I'll give you links in the description. You can go and check them out, and I'm sure there might be curious person out there. Let's talk about the suspensive veto. Suspensive veto, as the name suggests, it is like returning the bill to the parliament for reconsideration. कि ठीक है थोड़ी देर के लिए suspend कर दिया and it is giving back to the parliament कि just reconsider that bill. But if that bill is represented by the parliament, maybe with or without amendments, then the president is bound to give his assent. Now, in this case, uh, now the president he does not possess this veto in case of money bills. So he does not have absolute veto on money bills. He does not have suspensive veto on either on neither on neither absolute veto on money bills nor suspensive veto on money bills. But normally the president gives his assent to money bills since they are introduced with prior permission. Okay, let's move on to the pocket veto. The pocket veto is like the president has neither ratified nor rejected the bill, and this veto power it can be exercised for an indefinite period of time. However, in US, the president can hold a bill for a maximum of 10 days, and so there is a phrase that says that. The pocket of the Indian president is bigger than pocket of the US president. Now, there is an important point that no veto power with respect to a constitutional amendment bill can be exercised by the president, and this was made by the 24th Constitutional Amendment Act, which made it obligatory for the president to give his assent to the constitutional amendment bills. So that's something which you should keep in mind that there's the 24th Constitutional Amendment Act came in 1971 through which it was made obligatory for the president to give his assent to the constitutional amendment bill. Alright, uh, let's talk about the presidential veto over the state legislature. Now, when a bill is passed and by the state legislature, it has to be presented to the governor. Now, the governor he has he has four options under uh, Article 200 of the Constitution. So again, he has four options. He might give his assent, he might withhold his assent, he might return the bill for reconsideration if it is not amenable. This is suspensive veto. This is absolute veto, and or and the fourth option is that he might reserve the bill for reconsideration of the president. Now, in this case, the president he he may exercise one of the four points under Article 201. Now, let's see what the president can do here. Now, the president he may give his assent again, withhold his assent, okay, and then he can ask the governor to return for reconsideration if it is not amenable, okay. Now, in case if it is presented again, here the president is not bound to give his assent as he was during the parliament. So, in this case, it is not obligatory for him in case it is even if it is presented again. And again, there is no time limit for the president to give his assent. So he enjoys suspensive veto, absolute veto, and pocket veto over the state legislature as well. Okay, that's all. I hope you guys liked the video. Please share, like, subscribe, and do let me know in the comment section as to what topics you want to be covered. I'm uh, covering all the topics. I'm planning to cover all the topics from M. Laxmikanth, and Thank you so much. Bye bye. Take care.